Good evening. Welcome, honorable guests and speakers. We're almost at the end of the program, so if your energy is running low, please help yourself with some light refreshments, as well as coffee. You can bring them in while engaging in the discussion. So I'll start with a short context of the topic on this session. So Indonesia has set a climate action to reduce emissions under FOLU Net Sink 2030. However, it is almost impossible to tackle climate change without addressing the status of biodiversity. Therefore, addressing biodiversity loss, restoration and protection are crucial for a sustainable and to achieve a healthy and green recovery. And today we are going to explore what successful restoration looks like and how best to do it. So to commence the panel, I will introduce you Dr. Zahrul Mutakin. He currently serves as a forest attaché of Indonesian Embassy in Tokyo. Let's put our hands together for Pak Zahrul. Over to you, Pak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mbak Mona. So I know this is very challenging session in before the last session, I think, but I think we have very, very important and distinguished speakers here. So I think I don't want to repeat what Mbak Mona said about the background of this session, but rather I would like to invite distinguished speakers that will talk about the biodiversity conservation, green recovery, and its connection to the climate change. First, I would like to invite Professor Rahmat Witular to come to the stage. Should I explain who he is? No, I don't think so. Even maybe some people more familiar with him rather than with their own family. So it's very, very important people who serve as president of UNFCCC COP13 Bali 2007, Indonesian President's Special Envoy for Climate Change 2010 until 2019. He is expert in climate change, biodiversity, environmental, whatever. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Silverius Oscars Unggul from the Deputy Chairperson for Environment and Forestry, Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or KADIN. Next, the third speaker will be Colin Moore, the Regional Carbon Advisor, Mekong at Wildlife Conservation Society. Please come to the stage. Last but not least, I would like to invite Mr. Nyoman Iswarayoga, Head of External Affairs of RER, Communication of APRA Group. Thanks. Thank you for being with us today. I would like to have my seat now. Thank you, distinguished speakers, for being us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like first to invite Professor Rahmat Witular to set up the tone to deliver his idea, his experience, his knowledge to share with us about how can the ambitious biodiversity conservation as well as the green recovery can be done for the climate resilience as well as the mitigation and adaptation for climate. So please, Pak Rahmat, floor is yours, Pak.
I just sit here, okay?
Yes, sit is okay.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dr. Talur and friends. I'm happy to be here facing a very distinguished audience and fellow panelists. I want to start by giving you bad news and good news. Right? Which one first?
Bad news first, Pak.
Okay, bad news. The bad news is that we are not in a good situation today. That's the bad news. So the world is being threatened by multiple threats. It's so bad that there is a uh, new, new word. So that is the Anthropocene threats. It is a combination of the climate change threat, the biodiversity threat, and the socio-economic threat. And that will be very bad. And that is very hard to overcome that and not making very good progress throughout the years. I have been around for quite a long time. I think all these gentlemen are there combined age is below my age. So we have a lot of things to do. Can I bring the new good news?
Yes.
Okay, the good news is that I see everybody here who are pioneers in all their fields. I see Professor Yatna there. I see Pasiho. I see everybody here who are convinced that we can make things happen. That is the good news. We don't surrender. We go fight on. That is the good news because we are what we are doing. That's right. So to start off with, I would like to kind of set the tone of the so-called threat of the climate change threat. I would like to share with you my previous experience, which is not good. So I beg your pardon because I was a culprit and I've been around here for 25 years. Maybe 20 years I've been involved in destroying the world. The last 5 years, I try to make my amends and try to make amends. So we are trying to do things that we can possibly do. We have the advantage of having new technologies. We have the advantage of the more creative people, the young people. And we have the advantage of having a history of fighting climate change, which was destroyed in the previous century, 19 until 2000, and until I accepted, I was appointed the Minister of Environment. And then I was involved in the climate change fight as a envoy of the president. I see progress, and I'm very happy that I see all these distinguished people here in doing that. It is very difficult for me to point the very exact way how to do it, but there is a long-standing opinion that climate change is everybody's business because it is everybody involved in it. That is why I would like to quote the 3 milestones in the climate change history, which is the first one is the acceptance that there's a climate change by the Kyoto Protocol. The second, there's the first COP, and we have the several COPs, but I would like to mention 2 other COPs that are very important, which is the Bali Roadmap, the Indonesian Presidential COP in 2013, COP 13, 27, and then the Paris COP, where it is recognized that it is everybody's business, so everybody has to do that. Along the way, there's the CBD that also recognizes that the CBD, that the biodiversity, is actually the primary victim of all that. So may I suggest that it is not mankind, it is the man that is the primary victim. it is the biodiversity is a primary victim of climate change, where man is only one component of it. So that is why what we're talking about is very opportune. If we can solve the relationship between climate change and climate change COPs and the biodiversity COP, then we can combine that as a common front. We tackle this. Since we have this expert explain that, maybe I will continue later on how to proceed. I will just start off the day by mentioning what lies ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Give applause to Pak Rahmat for his inspiring talks about his experience and also his idea, his suggestion that the biodiversity is the primary victim of climate change. So we have to conserve the biodiversity, as well as maybe next we can also see that biodiversity will also be one of the solution of tackling the climate change. Sorry for this disturbing situation. Yes, but we can learn from what Pak Rahmat said. The bad news is the situation of the climate, the Earth's climate now is not good, but the faces here of the people have been promising that you are, even the young generation, but you can see at the back, is already involved in climate action. So we see the hope for the future of climate action. It's a great promising for us. Okay, then we move to the next speakers. I invite Mr. Silverius Orskas Unggul, the Deputy Chairperson for Environment and Forestry, Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to talk about the initiative or example of biodiversity conservation by practitioner or by maybe private sector. Please, Pak.
Thank you. Distinguished people here, Pak Rahmat, Ibu Erna, Pak Jatna, ada Mas Agusari, Pak Sihol, semuanya ya Bapak Ibu sekalian. I'm so sorry, I think in Kadin, we now running we call it regenerative forest hub. One of the very important thing in this hub is biodiversity. I remember first time when I choose as a vice chairman for environment and forestry. We have we plan to meet with Payatna and biologists in Indonesia, but sadly because at the time is COVID, Pak. So when I running test, I'm positive. But I think we really agree between Kadin members to see the potential of our biodiversity. And in the hub of in Kadin, we want to learn each other between Kadin members how to develop the potential of this kind of biodiversity. Of course, if we're talking about biodiversity, we are not talking about the flora, but also the potential of fauna and everything there. Now, in the hub, we try to identify the methodology between us, yeah. How to measure, how to monitor our biodiversity. And we talking about landscape. Now, in the hub, landscape is not do by one concession, but landscape maybe include many concessions surround. And include, for example, social forestry or hutan adat, customary land, and others. So we talking about the system of monitoring, and we want to promote together, we learn together about the biodiversity potential, and for many purposes. First, of course, we will go to Colombia maybe next year, early, to learn from Colombia. Sometimes I am same, yeah. We learn to Colombia because Colombia already have a good system for biodiversity credit. We want to know how they develop them and how we can do also for Indonesia. And the others, I think we have a MOU with BRIN, Indonesia. BRIN itu Indonesia, ya BRIN ya, Indonesia Research ya, Research and Innovation Agency, to try to identify what kind of source from the forest we can use for pharmacy or for cosmetic. So because in multi-purpose, multi-usaha kehutanan, we want to explore more, not only timber, but the potential of the biodiversity and others in our concession. So in this hub in Kadin, we want to explore that. We want to explore, learn between us, and I think April, one of the leaders for this issue, we want to together, because I think Pasihol is chairman of this head permanency of in Kadin about this. So I think this is for us, for Indonesian Chambers of Commerce, this is a big opportunity. This is the right time to pay attention to this biodiversity issue. And because my background is NGOs, so the Kadin in Pak Arsad has tagline, inclusive and collaborative. Maybe one best example of inclusivity is he chose me as a vice chairman for environment and forestry. But I think what different now, landscape issue, landscape approach is not the new one. Many times we're talking about landscape issue, landscape approach. But what different now is this time lead by private sectors. In the latter, lead sometimes for NGOs, for us, for example. Of course, there are many friends here, but very difficult to get support from private sectors. But now the time is changed. Private sector want to lead. We hope we can success in this, and I think the collaboration is very important. So this is the situation in Indonesian Chambers of Commerce right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Proud, for Pak Silverius. So Pak Silverius has been presenting that the Chamber of Commerce have like a regenerative business hub. So it's very, very important for not only for biodiversity conservation, but also biodiversity utilization, but for the biodiversity credit, for example, bioprospecting, and so on. So we also conserve it, but we can also utilize sustainably the biodiversity. So it is also he said that the landscape approach is not the new approach, but with this kind of innovation, we can move forward more green with a more environmentally friendly situation. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Colin from the WCS to talk about the collaborative approach, for example, at the international scale, and how this can be one of the strategy to biodiversity conservation as well as tackling the climate change now. Please, time is yours.
Thank you. I believe there's supposed to be some slides.
Slide, please. Okay.
Okay, so my name is Colin Moore. I'm WCS's Regional Carbon Advisor. And today sitting here should actually be Ms. Novyar Induyani, Ms. Ibuyani, one of the giants of conservation in Indonesia, but unfortunately she could not be here, so I've come to step in. What I will talk about today is a bit of, this landscape approach, this, what have been some of the strategies, especially in these high biodiversity conservation areas. How do we help manage these landscapes? How do we ensure their long-term protection so that they continue to be sources of important biodiversity, but also, stores of carbon, because these are large areas, they're biodiversity rich, they're carbon rich, but if threatened, they also become a source of emissions. So what does it look like, this landscape approach, and who are the partners involved to be able to truly manage these sites? So for those that might not know WCS, we're an NGO, we're a global conservation NGO that works to save wildlife, wild places, through science, conservation, education, and inspiring people to value nature. We work in 60+ countries globally, 14 different global ecoregions, and help manage over about probably 80 different protected areas globally. Typically through very, very long-standing engagements in these landscapes, 20, 25, 30 years, because that's what it takes to really manage these sites. Within Indonesia, we've been working there for over about 25 years now through long-term MOUs with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. It's no secret that Indonesia is a biodiversity superpower. Okay, enormous stores of very important biodiversity, unique to that place, unique globally, but also an area that is under threat. Deforestation rates have certainly come down significantly across Indonesia. It's been a major success in Indonesia, but some of these protected areas remain threatened, whether that's by small-scale agriculture, large-scale agriculture, or even other forms of threat to wildlife. So they continue to be important places to work in. As an organization, we work from kind of west to east, from Aceh all the way across to northern Malukus. We have programs that are both terrestrial-based and marine-based, and we also have cross-cutting issues around wildlife trade, wildlife health, and obviously a rights and communities program. All of these are integrated into how we operate in a landscape. Our approach to managing these protected areas is what we call a multi-layered landscape approach. This starts with the types of activities you need to do in the core areas of these protected areas. These are the boots on the ground, the patrolling, the law enforcement, the biodiversity monitoring. But then there's a whole range of additional activities that need to be done in the periphery of these protected areas. This is often where we see the threats coming in. This is where, as a conservation organization, we need to engage in as well. And I'll talk through some of these in a little bit more detail and who the key partners are in each of those interventions. So within the actual protected area, here we're talking about, our key partner is the protected area authorities, the ones that, the government agencies responsible with managing these areas. The types of activities we need to do are things like forest patrolling and using SMART. SMART is technology-based applications that you can record and understand what's happening in your landscape. Where are your threats? Where should you be focusing your interventions? What are the scale of these? It's a data-heavy data management system to understand your threats and interventions. Obviously, we need to monitor biodiversity. We understand what the trends are, what is happening. Ideally over at regular intervals, so you can understand what your trends are. These landscapes are also, they're not just biodiversity, it's not just wildlife. These are human landscapes as well. Communities that live in or on the immediate surrounding of these protected areas. And this can result in human-wildlife conflict. That's something that needs to be mitigated for the protection of the humans and for the wildlife. And over these long-term commitments over this time, improving the management effectiveness of these protected areas is something we spend a lot of time with our government partners on. But these protected areas, they don't sit in islands of their own. They sit within a broader landscape, a landscape that includes, as I mentioned, the communities. It includes district capitals. It also includes concessions as well. So in order, these protected areas cannot sit in isolation. They need to demonstrate how they fit within provincial development plans. We need to do land use planning with local government. We work with municipal, district, provincial authorities to really set the regulatory framework for biodiversity conservation. We also know that Indonesia is a country that's developing and developing rapidly. This often comes along with improved infrastructure, improved access. This can be a threat to biodiversity, but if done properly, sited properly, mitigation measures put in place, can serve the purposes both of local development, but also biodiversity conservation. I've mentioned a few times already the importance of local communities and the rights-based approach that we take to conservation. A lot of these communities that live in and around the protected areas are some of the poorest, some of those with the fewest livelihood opportunities, and they need to be brought into the fold. They need to be a part of our conservation action. We do a lot of work, therefore, on supporting communities with their with agricultural extension, improving their production, but also finding ways to reduce the impact of potential some of the commodities that they may be growing. So this is where it becomes a partnership not only of WCS, the protected area, and the local communities, but also begins to engage the private sector that operates in and around these protected areas. And this is where, the work of Kadin and the conservation elements that they're incorporating into their concessions becomes an interesting interface between these protected areas and that private sector. And this is an area that WCS has been engaging on increasingly with the private sector, is finding how to promote these deforestation-free supply chains. Our work within these landscapes, our work and partnerships with these communities, our monitoring systems become a valuable asset to those companies that operate in the landscape, or perhaps even more importantly, are sourcing from this landscape. And so by our work to do land use planning, help to map these community areas, to develop improved production methods, these are all valuable frameworks that can tap into the private sector sourcing, and private sector partnerships. So I'll stop there for now, but that was just to give a sense of the scale of the initiatives and the different partnerships that are important in managing and preserving biodiversity and also delivering climate benefits through that.
Okay, thank you. Applause for Colin. Thank you, Colin, for delivering your speech on how WCS have been operate in the region as well as in Indonesia, and how WCS have a multi-layered landscape approach that have been applied in Indonesia. Then some of the collaborative action and strategies to involve all stakeholders in biodiversity conservation. So next, I would like to invite Pak Nyoman Iswara Yoga from the April to present about the area conservation, the Rio ecosystem restoration. So, Pak Nyoman, floor is yours, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Zarul. Good evening once again, distinguished guests, fellow honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Despite of the noise next door, I think we should not be distracted with the focus of what we are being here. And I thank once again the Pavilion Indonesia for giving us opportunity to be here and sharing our projects, programs, and what we have been progressing in the past few years. I also thank because the session is arranged this week ahead of the 9th of November, where COP28 will only celebrate the Nature Day, where COP will start realizing how important nature needs to be embedded into the overall climate negotiation processes. I think it's increasingly recognized that climate actions needs to put nature, livelihoods, and people in the heart of its actions. As Pak Rahmat Witular say, if I may borrow, we are not okay at the moment. So it needs to be holistic approach that we need to bring back ourselves back to the trajectory of 1.5 degree. In spite of the progresses that we made, of course, it's also being recognized we are currently out of the track, and only collaboration, as mentioned by Pak Onte and colleagues from WCS, only through collaboration that we are able to bring ourselves slowly back into the track. Latest studies also say that at least 1/3 of emission reduction needed to bring us back into the track can be fulfilled by protecting and restoring nature. So this is where I come into to introduce the programs that we are currently running that has been already a decade this year. Some of you may have heard about this, but I'll give you more updates towards this evening. But before I proceed further, let me allow myself to introduce about April. Some of you may not familiar about April. April is one of the largest and technically advanced sustainable pulp and paper products in the world. We are based in Riau, in eastern part of Sumatra Island. I will show you later on where exactly we are located. Our production is guided through the Sustainable Forestry Management Policy, launched back in 2015. We are also doing many of research and development, and the operation is guided with a science-based management of forestry resources. The unique thing that I will tell you the story about is what or how we manage the landscapes, particularly the one that we operate in Kampar Peninsula. We are managing landscapes using a model that is now proven as a production protections, where our plantation concession provide a protections to a restorations area, which currently operate in 130,000. We have a total license of 150,000, but another 20,000 is operating in quite a different landscape. So as I promised, some of you in the room may not even familiar where Sumatra is. This is one of the largest island in Indonesia. Our operations focusing on the eastern part of the island. I mentioned about the Kampar Peninsula. You can see the color part of the island there. It's only around 25 minutes by flight from Singapore. If you are more familiar to Singapore, from Jakarta you need 1.5 hours flight to get to Pekanbaru, and still some few hours to reach our operations. The landscape, I will explain later about the brown part, but you can see the light green part is where our plantation is. The darker green is a set-aside area where we are protecting as a forest, not operated as a plantation. The purple one is a conservation area managed by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. So we are in neighbor with 1 national park and 3 wildlife sanctuaries within the landscape. There are also 2 village forests adjacent to our operation area, and a number of other company concessions within the landscape. Why this is important? Because in part of the sustainable forestry management policy, we declared the company commitment of 1 for 1, where every hectare of plantation that we are operating, we are committed to operate 1 hectare of restoration and conservation. So far, we have reached 80% of that commitment. They're slowly progressing, and we are still looking at partnerships, an area where we can count towards fulfilling 100% of the commitment. In addition to that, why conservation and restoration is part of the heart in our operation, because back in November 2020, part of our new sustainability agenda, April 2030, we are also adding a commitment of $1 to 1 ton of every fiber sent to our production mill. Means this will be providing an additional fund, around 12 to 13 million at least per year, to support conservation efforts, not only those directly managed by April, but also those that are partnering with the company. So I mentioned Restoration Ecosystem Riau. It comprises of 5 ecosystem restoration forestry business licenses. The total is 150,000 hectares. And from the very beginning, we realized that biodiversity is a critical part of running the ecosystem restoration. You can see in the timeline some highlighted milestones that we have. We started the first biodiversity survey back in 2015, because when we started the operations in the landscapes, we have no information about the biodiversity within the area. We are partnering with one of the conservation NGO, Fauna and Flora, back in 2015. And we are continuously doing the biodiversity monitoring on daily basis through patrol, camera trap, including now working with WCS, learning from WCS experience on applying smart patrol, also to intensify the data collections for our biodiversities. Back then, we only count just over 700 species back in 2015, but to date, we have been inventorying at least 850 species within the landscape, both plant, trees, and animals. Since 2018, we are annually participating in the Asian Waterbird Census. This is also coordinated by BirdLife International's consortiums, and we are one of the parties that are regularly since then submitting a waterbird into the database, because of course, as nature, this is a peatland area, and that's important as part of the trajectory of the migratory bird species over the world. In 2019, using the methodology approved by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, we also completed the first Sumatran White Tiger survey, occupancy survey, in the landscape, in the Kampa Peninsula landscape. So we now do have the data from the survey in 2019, the estimate occupancy of Sumatran tiger within the landscape, which can fit into how we can manage the landscape safe for both the tigers and the humans that exist within the landscape. Back in the 2020, we were fortunate and we were very happy to be able to support the government of Indonesia, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, because the landscape was considered good to release one of the rehabilitated tigers. So 1 tiger was captured and injured and was rehabilitated back in the rehabilitation center in West Sumatra. And through intensive study, it was decided the tiger would be released in the landscapes. And then also during that year and continuing until now, we initiated the first odonata survey also in the landscape. Odonata also critical for wetland landscape like peatland because it can serve as an indicator of the healthiness of the landscape. Means we can also measure the progress of the work that we are doing with a frequent survey of odonata. There may be an opportunity to find also unknown species because this was the first, but still some science verification still needed towards that event. So how this link to the title of the event on the ambitious biodiversity and green recovery? We are managing the activities on the ground through 4 approaches. One is to protect the landscape. It is important in restoring and recovery of the landscape to protect, to avoid any new disturbance into the area. So this is, of course, through the regular patrol. Again, we are trying to intensify our actions on the ground by applying smart patrol, learning from colleagues in WCS. Secondly, it is important for us to know, to keep assessing what we have within the landscape, so we know what conservation strategy that we need to apply to manage the populations of species that we have within our landscape. Thirdly, of course, the restoring and the recovery itself, where we also do some active planting within the area where heavy degradation occurred. But as this is peatland, and from the initial survey, we know there are hundreds of canals, wild canals left from the previous forestry operations within the area. So we are also doing canal blocking to start rewetting the peatland within the landscape itself. This, of course, will enhance the carbon stock in addition to the protect efforts where it protects the existing carbon stocks from the biomass within the forestry area. Last but not least, this relates again to what Pak Onte and Colin says about manage. We cannot manage this alone because we are neighboring with other land managers within the landscape. So that's critical for us to create a common vision, how we can protect, also restore together and in collaborations, also with the community living around the forestry area that we are managing. So I'm talking a little bit more about the biodiversities. We are now having, by end of 2023, we are now calculating 861 species. We are still looking through research with species critically to have a conservation strategy amongst of this, and which intervention that will be favorable for its species that we have in our inventory. In addition to the release of Sumatran tiger that I told you earlier, a few months ago, we are also helping the provincial Riau conservation agencies to release a sambar deer. So 4 individuals of sambar deer was kept for quite many years by the community, and the community has got the awareness now to return the sambar deer to the nature. So based on, again, the scientific assessment, the government decided to release in our landscape. And also knowing sambar deer is the prey for Sumatran tiger that we know exists and roam around within the landscape. Biodiversity probably is a core and strong activity that we have, but this cannot be left alone without the community participations. Protections from fire, as we need to do, how the communities still have access to the forest that they are rely on. There are group of fishermen that still from time to time going into the river within our concessions, and how they can support the forest restorations that we need to deliver from year to year based on our annual plan for planting. Although many of the area will not require active interventions, we learned in the past 10 years that forest can recover by itself. Forest has a very strong ability to recover if we are able to create the environment without any disturbance throughout the year. So that's critical. I think I would leave you there to give us time for more discussions. Again, I recognize we are under pressure to deliver more during this COP, but I'm fully aware that we as a country, Indonesia is committed to do that. And I do really hope as part of business community, we are supporting the ambitions and we are able to make a reality to avoid the irreversible impact of climate change. Let's stay focused on this and remind ourselves to unite, act, and deliver as COP28 expects from Dubai. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Nyoman, for very extensive explanation about what the RER have been done on the ground, and also what the result of your works since then. So before I I open a Q&A, I would like also to invite Pak Rahmat first to have a comment or suggestion about what we have been talking about the biodiversity conservation.
Thank you. I won't take up too much of the time. I just have a comment. I hear the very valuable information that we just hear from my fellow panelists. It just strikes me that the realization that the smarter one gets, the more stupid you become. The more riches you get, the more stingier you become. That's a phenomena that we see in the fight for climate change. I think I have a small group of people thinking alike that we are going it the wrong way. What we should do is not have a COP that consists of world leaders. What we should do is collect the general population and try to get some sense of what we're doing now. I've been to this moment to 24 COPs, and I never have concrete ones. The solution to that is that we involve more non-state actors into decisions for a COP. Then the top-down approach should be replaced by bottom-up approach. And the second comment is that I think that the CBD and the COP should work together and have a common platform so we can, what is said by Pak Nyoman, to have a complete, total solution to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you for your hope and also suggestion about the COPs needs to have a more common platform, and also the role of the non-state actors need to be enhanced for these COPs, and also the next COP for having more good decision for our community. Now we still have a couple of minutes for the Q&A. I'm inviting from the floor if there are something that can be question or suggestions. Pak Dodi, please.
Thank you very much, Pak Zahrul, for the opportunity to ask question. I'd like to raise the issue of Pak Nyoman just mentioned. Congratulations, Pak Nyoman, that you have maintained a very successful biodiversity efforts in the forest plantation area. This is not easy. It's very difficult, I know. You mentioned that more than 800 harimau, yeah?
No, species, Pak. Different
Species, yeah. But that is very successful efforts to me. My question is, how can you maintain the emission reduction in such of a huge plantation area in one side, but another side that you can increase the biodiversity conservation? You know, as I understand correctly, if in a plantation area, it's not easy to increase the emission capacity, absorption, sequestration, because once you plant the trees, then the capacity is decreased. And then once you plant the trees, then it's increased. So in the long run, there should be, it's just like flat, you know. So it seems to me that there is no increase in capacity absorption, in capacity carbon sequestration. So how can you explain this? Maybe you increase the yield, annual yield, and then you reduce the cutting area. Then to me, it makes sense. But if you keep the same area for harvesting, and there is no efforts to increase the yield, then it doesn't make any difference. Thank you, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Pak. Before Pak Nyoman respond, I would like to invite Pak Yatna to have say.
Thank you. I really appreciate to hear this commitment of the companies, especially plantation and landscape, and how that combining this effort. And I think that what I hear, that's already over 30 years that monitoring the biodiversity and how that really. I think maybe the very important thing is that what we need is how do we get that science monitorings and other things into policy makings. And that's really what you call it, the translation science. Translation science is very important. In Indonesia, it's just very weak. So I hope that next time, when you involve academicians, hopefully they can help that into a policy and science. And the second one, I like to address to Colin. I think you have so much experience on the carbons and biodiversity credits. Any methods that progress on the biodiversity offset and credits? Because that's really important, because Indonesia, of course, waiting for that, the progress, not only carbon, because carbon, yes, we are very huge carbon stocks, but also I think the biodiversity also, so it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yatna, for your question and also suggestion. Next, I would like to invite also the last question, the last response, please.
Thank you so much for this chance to talk. Actually, I'm sorry that I arrived late. I just landed here in Dubai 3 hours ago from Bangkok, so sorry if I missed something. Just to introduce myself, my name is Muhammad Abdelwaris, and I'm the lead impact analyst of Global Mangrove Trust in Singapore. So I have just a question to Par Rahmat, if he just can help us understand this point here. Maybe this already explained before, but I didn't intend there, so sorry again. For regarding to the policy in Indonesia now, regarding to selling carbon credits, it's still little like many organizations, they're trying to register Indonesia and they try to apply in SRN as already announced by the Minister of Environment. But I think it is still like little clear, and especially like next year, there will be the presidential election and Indonesia will have a new president. So I just want to ask Par Rahmat about his opinion, is there any estimation for a change in the already existed policy of the carbon credits in Indonesia, or it will be maintained as the same, or what will happen? Just thank you.
thank you, Muhammad, from Singapore. So I would like to try to wrap up the questions from Pak Dodi is about how can area the April can maintain the emission capacity, emission reduction capacity, or carbon sequestration capacity for long run. And then Pak Yatna already mentioned about the translation of science that need to be also addressed. But there is specific question to Colin about the biodiversity offset, and then from Muhammad about to Pak Rahmat about the policy about the carbon credit that has not been clear or clearly working in Indonesia. So I would like to all the speakers to respond, but for the specific question, I would like first from Pak Rahmat to respond what the Muhammad asked about the carbon credit in Indonesia.
Can you be more specific about your question? But before I don't represent the government, right? So what is the question?
Thanks, Mr. Ahmed. Actually, my question is about your estimation about the next year. Like, the policy will change? My voice, yeah?
Yes, your voice. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Ahmed. Actually, I just want to know your estimation about the next year regarding the policy of Indonesia on selling carbon. It will be the same like what announced in June and July, but we know, everyone we know, it's still in progress. We know this, and people now are registering in SRN. But if you can just give a short explanation about your opinion or your estimation about what will happen next year after Indonesia will elect the new president. Thank you.
After new government, what situation next?
Thank you for the question. It is a question I would like to ask myself, actually. but to answer this, I am optimistic that we will make headway because the previous government is also starting to make the groundwork for that. And the minister the present minister just made a statement here in this COP, and the president also. And I just give you some confidence that because I'm an Indonesian and I am a patriot, I believe that all the three presidents are green. So, rest of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Pa. Thank you. Applause for our guru. Pa Silverus, any comment for the question?
No, I think like Payatna said about the methodology and anything, I think this is Indonesian Chambers of Commerce really want to involve with the academia or expert on this, because I think like April already do good things and we want to learn, and the others concession also start. I know exactly now many concessions want to start, but with biodiversity, with the methodology, but we still learn. So I think this is like I mentioned before, this is a good opportunity and good time, and many things can do with the collaboration. Maybe like it.
Thank you, Pa Silverus. So next, Colin, any response to the audience?
Well, I'll respond to the question about biodiversity credits that was addressed at me. So, in order to truly deliver on biodiversity conservation, it needs to be valued, and sufficient finance needs to be delivered for these types of activities. You alluded in your question to the fact that in the carbon markets, there's an element of valuing biodiversity, but that's seen typically as an add-on to the unit of carbon, So it's the unit of carbon, and then, yeah, your project may deliver biodiversity benefits, co-benefits. Those are measured, but the unit of value is the carbon asset, is the carbon unit. So there's perhaps an embedded value to it, but it's not distinct. Another potential source of finance linked to biodiversity are biodiversity offsets, but as they relate to, let's say, the mitigation hierarchy. So you have a development that has a very localized and measured impact, likely on a specific habitat type or a specific species, for which you can potentially find another site that you restore or you protect as a one-for-one offset. Both of those are probably not going to still deliver the scale of finance that's needed. And so I think where you were heading with your question was, if we look at truly biodiversity credits, so if there was demand, for example, from the private sector, with the private sector recognizes that across their entire supply chain, all of the different sources that they're sourcing from and whatnot, that they have an environmental and a biodiversity impact, how could they compensate for that? And that's where you would then need to have a better measurement of what is biodiversity. And whilst, carbon is hard to measure, it's much easier to measure than biodiversity, because there's a complexity of measurements that goes into saying what is biodiversity. Is biodiversity a species measure? Is it an ecosystem? Is it a habitat measure? Is it a ecosystem measure? And so only now, I think, is the scientific community really beginning to tackle these questions of what that measurement is, how you quantify it, and then from that, how do you give that some value? I think you're starting to see a little bit of demand from the private sector. You're starting to see an emerging market for this. But the science is young, the market is small, but there is effort going into it. And I think this might be a market of the future, where we are with biodiversity credits now is maybe where we were in the carbon markets 20 years ago. So some initial promising signs, but there's still a bunch of science and market development that needs to happen before I think we get the scale of finance we need.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Colin, for your response. Then last, I would like to have a response from Pak Nyoman about the specific question, but also maybe you can also add some lesson learned or to inspire others about your works in Rio ecosystem restoration. Please, Pak.
Thank you. I'll start with Pak Dodi questions. Well, I will explain first, Pak, because restoration ecosystem Riau license, as I described before, is ecosystem restoration. So we are not having the mandate of plantation operations. So what we need is identify where the area of the landscape that is degraded, and then we decide whether we need an active intervention of planting or just a maintenance of the surrounding area to allow the forest recover. So that's the approach of enhancing the carbon stocks within the restorations area. We are also in the learning curve to see the dynamics of carbon sequestrations in that sense. And I'm not in the right position to say that, but I would like to invite you, because my other colleagues will be here in the sessions organized by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry on the 9th of December, and he will talk more about the study that we have from the 4 flux tower that we are operating in Riau and collecting data over 5 years now, and he will be bring the analysis of the data that has been published in the Nature journal. So that's probably one session that you would like to reserve yourself to attend for. To Pak Yatna, yes, Pak, we are increasingly involving local academics, especially, of course, when we are involving foreign experts, like the Odonata surveys. We are bringing in experts from IUCN specialist group, and we need, of course, have an obligation to involve local academics. And again, even though this is 10 years that we started the survey of biodiversity, we are still far from knowing what really conservation strategy needs in the landscape. We are still in the learning curve. We are only doing the census part, but not looking at the specific species of what intervention we can do, either to maintain or if there is an opportunity to increase the populations of species, for instance. And again, in relation to that, it's important to work with other land managers because biodiversity or wildlife doesn't know borders. And that's why we create, under the Pasihol operation team, we create a buffer within our plantations to allow movement of wildlife as well, from plantations to restorations area and wherever they are more comfortable to live with the situations of the landscapes. But I think it's true, it's important, the more that we know, I think the more this can fit into the policy. And of course, we are also reporting frequently to the provincial conservation agencies up to the DG conservations at Jakarta, so that with the hope, of course, the data can enrich what the current inventory of biodiversity species with expectations, we can support also the government target towards species conservation in that sense. I think I would close with that, Pak. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Plot, for all the distinguished speakers. With that, we conclude our session today. Thank you for your participation, and also thanks a lot for all the speakers who are already delivering and inspiring us with their ideas, their works, and also what next to be done to more consolidated efforts for climate action at the local, national, as well as in international levels. Thank you very much.